If you've been around the blockchain or crypto space over the last year, then you've likely heard about, Web 3.0 and what a massive game changer this is going to be for the internet. Creating new possibilities, a brighter future for all, and very likely a massive upside profit potential if you can catch this trend at the right time. But what exactly is Web 3.0 concretely broken down into layman's terms? How does it change the internet? And what are some examples of Web 3.0 applications that are being used right now and ones that are coming out in the future? Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about today in this video as a blockchain developer who works with technology on a daily basis. So if you're new around here, hey, I'm Gregory, and on this channel, I turn you into a blockchain master. So if that's something that you're interested in, then smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to learn how to master blockchain step-by-step start to finish, then head on over to dappuniversity.com/bootcamp to get started today. All right, so let's jump into this. So, from a really high level, what is Web 3.0? Well, essentially, it's an internet powered by blockchains. And it's an internet that wasn't really possible before all the benefits that blockchains provide, like an internet of value, decentralization, trust minimization, and permissionlessness. And I know a lot of those sound like big, fancy words that you may not understand at first glance, but these are really critical, characteristics that actually allow Web 3.0 to create new business models and kind of reinvent how the internet works, which will be evident as I talk about those things in this video. And so what are some really simple examples of things that you can do with Web 3.0 that you couldn't do, with other previous versions of the internet? Well, a pretty easy example is, cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. So let's just start off with cryptocurrency. This is actually creating a form of money that is native to the internet, okay? And you couldn't exactly do that with the internet before we had blockchains, because one big characteristic of maybe Web 2.0, for example, is an internet powered by databases, siloed databases that live on somebody's central server. And the last thing you want to do is give somebody who owns a central server the power to create a money, because they could manipulate, the money supply or your own balance however they see fit, because they have complete control over that. Well, if you have a Web 3.0 blockchain powered internet, then people actually share copies of the code and all the data across multiple computers where it can't be manipulated. So that's an example of decentralization, an example of the internet of value, this trust minimization that I'm talking about. But taking that to the next level, we have permissionlessness, which is one of the other things that I said. And you see that play out in decentralized finance, where take this to the next level, where you have not only just cryptocurrency, but things that you can do with cryptocurrency that you would normally do in the regular financial world, and also new things like trade cryptocurrencies. You can do this in a permissionless way. You don't have to ask anybody's permission to get on a decentralized exchange or a DEX to trade, and you don't have to provide your identity information, which essentially retains more of your privacy, which is something that you completely give up in Web 2.0. Now, these are two common examples of apps that exist right now. Crypto and DeFi are examples of Web 3.0 use cases, but the possibilities extend way beyond what you can just do with money. And I want to talk about those more, and how this actually turns the business model of the internet upside down, and how it iterates on Web 2.0 and to usher in Web 3.0, what that looks like compared to other previous versions of the internet. So to do that, let's just do a quick recap of all the previous versions of the internet, how they're like one another, how they're different from one another, and then how Web 3.0 comes into the equation. So let's start off with Web 1.0. So Web 1.0 really starts off as the first version of the internet, primarily categorized by just static websites that don't really do very much besides just display information on the page, right? You can go to a website, it's got, some text on it, some pictures, a cool design, maybe a hit counter. You might be able to email that website around. Maybe that's how you find out about new websites. And we start to see search engines really start to hit the scene. Now transition to more Web 2.0, where you have a much more sophisticated user experience on the internet that creates new possibilities, where you have actual web applications where you're signing up with a username and a password, where you start to be able to actually access the internet on a mobile device. You see social networking start to absolutely explode. E-commerce takes off like a rocket ship, and tons of new business models completely, come onto the scene and change the world really forever. And so as Web 2.0 hits the scene, it really changes how the business models of the internet work. So I want to show you this, because this is really important to understand so that you can, grasp how Web 3.0 changes things. So let's take an example of social networking, okay? So the business models for Web 3.0 are essentially that in many cases, you're getting something free, and in turn, they're getting information from you, and they're just selling that information. They're extracting value from you, in many cases where you don't actually know it. And this can be disrupted by Web 3.0, and I'll explain that here in a second. So let's just look at an example of social networking. So we'll take Facebook as an example. So let's say, a user signs up for Facebook, okay? Well, their incentive to do this is so that they can, network with other people, use this really actually amazing application that's taken an insane amount of money to develop and grow to the point that it has today, okay? And the more users that actually use the network, the more valuable it becomes. But Facebook's got to pay the bills somehow. And so how do they do it if you're largely using the application for free? Well, it's because they, are monetizing your information. So basically, whenever you sign up for Facebook, you give them a username and password. They track you everywhere online. So you get a cookie back on your computer. So anytime that, you visit an e-commerce website, you visit a news website, all your browsing history, they're basically, capturing all that data with a website, because all these websites also have Facebook pixels installed on their sites, because their incentive is they actually want to pay, to run ads so they can get their customers back off Facebook. All right, back onto their websites. And so you're tracked pretty much everywhere online. And so, at the end of the day, Facebook knows a lot about you based upon all your browsing history. And they're getting more and more sophisticated as time goes on at actually generating more insights about you that you don't even realize that you're giving to them. And they're making an absolute killing, all right, off of you, because they're selling this information to advertisers who want to spend on their platform, and also probably selling it to people off their platform as well. And that right there is one of the most popular, business models for Web 2.0 as it exists today. Give away something for free in turn for information. And in many cases, people who are, charging money for services in Web 2.0 models are also collecting information, because why wouldn't they do that anyway? People are clearly fine with it. We'll just make extra money that way too. So the problem with this business model is very extractive. It just takes something from your users. I mean, you're giving them some value by giving them the product for free, but you're just making an absolute killing off of them without any money really going back to the users for using it. Web 3.0 can be different in the sense where, as users use the thing itself, then they can reap the monetary benefits for doing so. And they actually, are incentivized to help grow the networks, because as the networks gain more network effect, the more people use it, the more valuable the protocols and applications become, and they're financially rewarded for doing this. And then the people that they help bring into the network are also financially rewarded for doing this. This is positive sum, and it really benefits everybody, who's a part of this. I mean, that's fundamentally how every single token-based community works in cryptocurrency right now. The more people hold the token, the more valuable it can become, and the people who are, really strong in that community are financially rewarded for bringing more people in, and those people can also be financially rewarded too. Now, a lot of people will instantly say, hey, that sounds like a Ponzi scheme. I mean, there will be some things that masquerade as Web 3.0 that are just straight up Ponzi schemes, but I would also push back and say, okay, so what do you call this model here where Facebook is just getting rewarded for the more people that, bring into the platform based on, their different incentives here. They're just misaligned. And I don't think it's quite fair to just call every single Web 3.0 application a Ponzi. And so if you want an example of that, an application that can actually reward people who are using it in a very positive some way that doesn't just look like a straight up Ponzi where it's like completely rewarding people who got in early and not so much people who got in at the end, then let's look at this example here. This isn't a complete Web 3.0 application yet, but it's a glimpse into what could be possible with Web 3.0 with this new paradigm. So this is from Raul Pal here. He's the founder and CEO of Real Vision Finance, has been a really forward-thinking person in this space with a ton of amazing calls and a really impressive track record. But let's look at what they're actually doing over at Real Vision Finance by community sourcing information. So he's saying he's watching in fascination as the hive mind of Real Vision bought crypto portfolio based on community-only weightings. So it's consistently outperformed the market. So his view is that community is smarter than any individual, as we all have access to quality information. He says the same thing happened with the Real Vision macro portfolio. And he says he has a strongly held view that the traditional view of markets, giving your money to experts, has now changed to together we are experts, as the movement towards Web 3.0 and communities with open access to information has super empowered community decision making. This trend has only started, but it's going to totally upend decision making hierarchies, not just in finance, but also many business models overall. It's the early days yet, but this trend is the beginning of even more disruption. So combining communities with AI and giving information back to the community in order to enable better decision making is powerful and the antithesis of the extractive business models of existing platforms that use AI to monetize your attention, just like I was talking about social media. So this is an example of something that is very positive sum. of course, the more people use it, the more valuable it becomes, but it can pretty evenly benefit everybody who is participating. Of course, people got in earlier. Of course, time in market always beats timing the market. So if you got in earlier to these insights, you're getting rewarded more from the person after it. But the whole point is you don't really need this person later to get a fundamental value as an early adopter. It gets more valuable as more people come in, but they're not necessary in order for the long-term value to increase. And of course, this is not directly paying people out who are using the application in a very automated way. So it's not like truly Web 3.0 in this sense, but it's a glimpse to what's possible with Web 3.0 and these positive sum business models. And eventually this can actually be automated away with blockchain. And if you want a final sort of summary or recap of like what I'm talking about here of Web 3.0, what it is and why it matters, then definitely check out this tweet thread here from Chris Dixon where he's saying, Web 1.0, roughly 1990 to 2005, was about open protocols that were decentralized and community governed. So most of the value accrued to the edges of the network, the users and the builders. So Web 2.0, roughly 2005 to 2020, was about siloed, centralized services run by corporations. Most of the value accrued to a handful of companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook. So we are now at the beginning of the Web 3 era, which combines the decentralized, community-governed ethos of Web 1 with the advanced modern functionality of Web 2. So Web 3 is the internet owned by builders and users orchestrated with tokens. So he's saying centralized platforms follow a predictable life cycle. At first, they do everything they can to recruit users and third-party complements like creators, developers, and businesses. They do this to strengthen the network effect. As platforms move up the adoption S-curve, their power over users and third parties steadily grows. So when they hit the top of the S-curve, their relationship with network participants change from positive sum to zero sum. To continue growing requires extracting data from users and competing with former partners. So famous examples of this are Microsoft versus Netscape, Google versus Yelp, Facebook versus Zynga, Twitter versus third-party clients, and Epic versus Apple. For third parties, the transition from cooperation to competition feels like a bait and switch. Over time, the best entrepreneurs, developers, and investors have learned not to build on top of centralized platforms. This is stifled innovation. So now let's talk about Web 3. In Web 3, ownership and control is decentralized. Users and builders can own pieces of the internet services by owning tokens, both non-fungible and fungible. Tokens give users property rights, the ability to own a piece of the internet. NFTs give users the ability to own objects, which can be art, photos, code, music, text, etc., etc. And basically saying all this exists on top of blockchain, and all this is, a future powered by blockchains that was not possible in Web 2.0 without these critical technologies. And we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with this, and the next decade is likely to be very bright and very fruitful for people who understand this stuff early, and that's one of the reasons I want to help make these YouTube videos so that you all can catch this during this critical time. So that's all I got for today. As always, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. That really helps these videos out so the more people can learn about blockchain. And if you're as fast at this technology as I am, you want to get your hands dirty, how can you get started today? You can go to my YouTube homepage. You can find my free courses there. They're like Udemy courses, but they're totally free. And if you like those and you want to take the next step, or hey, maybe you want to take a master shortcut entirely, I can show you how to become a blockchain master step-by-step start to finish over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. You don't have to be an expert to get started today. I've helped people with zero coding experience become real-world blockchain developers in a matter of months. So that's all I've got. And until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.